It was just after 11:40 p.m. on a stormy October night in 2023 when 14-year-old Emily Harper was admitted to St. Mercy's Hospital, a quiet, medium-sized facility located in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. Emily had collapsed during biology class earlier that day, clutching her head and whispering something her teacher couldn't make out. She was unresponsive by the time paramedics arrived, and according to hospital staff, she began to seize shortly after admission, but all her tests came back clean. No signs of epilepsy, trauma, or toxins. It was as if her body had glitched, without a cause. Doctors decided to keep her overnight for observation, placing her in room 413 on the hospital's 4th floor. Nurses checked on her every hour, noting that she would mutter strange words in her sleep, something about the wires and black water. Her parents, Jacob and Marla Harper, waited by her bedside until 10:15 p.m. before heading home briefly to get fresh clothes and check on their younger son. By all appearances, Emily was stable, resting quietly under sedation. But at 3:17 a.m., a night nurse doing routine rounds opened the door to room 413 and found the hospital bed completely empty. The 4 was still attached to the pole, fluids dripping into thin air. The heart monitor was still beeping steadily, its wires dangling off the side. Her hospital bracelet was missing, and her slippers were neatly placed at the foot of the bed. It looked as though she had vanished without moving a single object. There was no panic, no mess, just absence. The hospital staff immediately locked down the floor and contacted security. Surveillance footage from the hallway outside room 413 was requested. But when the IT technician pulled the feed, the data was corrupted. The footage between 2:41 a.m. and 3:25 a.m. had been mysteriously deleted. A tech expert brought in later would say the timestamp glitches looked intentional, like someone with high-level access had scrubbed the record. Windows in the room were sealed shut and reinforced. The door had been locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry or exit. It didn't make sense. By sunrise, detectives were already on the scene, but even they were baffled. Emily's chart, which included handwritten doctor notes and overnight monitoring data, was also missing from her room. No fingerprints. No clues. No one had seen her leave. Security at the hospital was tight, keycard controlled, and no one without clearance had access to her floor. For all anyone could tell, Emily Harper had disappeared into thin air, right in the middle of one of the most secure buildings in the city. And that was just the beginning. In the days following Emily's disappearance, her parents, Jacob and Marla Harper, fell into a kind of waking nightmare. Media vans surrounded their driveway. Reporters camped outside their front lawn, hungry for any new development, but nothing came. No ransom note, no sightings, no messages. Every hour that passed only twisted the knife deeper. Jacob, a quiet software engineer, turned into a sleepless wreck, obsessively analyzing security blueprints of the hospital. Marla, a local art teacher, refused to eat or sleep, her eyes hollow, her voice cracking every time someone mentioned Emily's name. They both believed, at first, that she had been kidnapped, but even that belief started to collapse under the weight of silence. Portland. Police launched a full-scale investigation, interviewing hospital staff, sweeping the entire building, checking phone records, examining patient logs, but they came up with nothing. The nurses on the 4th floor were all cleared. No one had seen anything. No alarms had gone off. Even the emergency exits, fitted with motion detectors and time-locked mechanisms, hadn't been triggered. An internal audit was conducted by the hospital's board, and yet, oddly, the results were never released to the public. Within 2 weeks, the tone of the investigation began to shift, from high urgency to quiet detachment. Like someone behind the scenes had told them to back off. The public, however, was not so easily silenced. Conspiracy forums exploded with theories. Was it human trafficking? A cult? An organ harvesting ring? One theory that gained traction online was that Emily had never left the hospital but had been intentionally hidden. A viral Reddit thread pointed out that St. Mercy's had previously received federal grants tied to classified medical research, the kind that usually came with non-disclosure agreements and blurred ethical lines. The hospital denied any wrongdoing, of course, but the rumors only grew louder. People in Portland began to feel uneasy, especially families with children. A protest formed outside the hospital gates, demanding transparency. "Where is Emily Harper?" Signs plastered the city. Her photo-wide eyes, faint freckles, and long chestnut hair became a constant presence on telephone poles, subway ads, and coffee shop windows. Candlelight vigils were held. News anchors couldn't stop talking about her. But slowly, as the months dragged on and no new evidence surfaced, the attention faded. Media outlets moved on. The public grew numb. The name Emily Harper slipped from headlines and into mystery. What haunted the Harper family most wasn't just the loss, but the way everyone else moved on. Investigators stopped returning their calls. The hospital refused to release Emily's full medical file, citing legal restrictions. Every attempt they made to dig deeper seemed to be met with resistance. It was as though some invisible hand was working to erase their daughter from existence entirely. And though they couldn't prove it, Jacob and Marla began to whisper a quiet belief between themselves. One too terrifying to accept out loud. Someone knew exactly what happened to Emily and wanted her forgotten. Nearly 2 years had passed since Emily Harper's disappearance, and for most people, her name had faded into urban myth, just another unsolved case, lost in the shuffle of time. But then, in the spring of 2025, something strange began to stir far beneath the surface of Portland. Deep within the city's aging canal and sewer system, maintenance workers started reporting unusual activity. It began with strange pressure spikes, random bursts of water flow that made no engineering sense. Then came the low-frequency humming, described by some crew members as metallic breathing echoing through the pipes at night. At first, the city's Water and Waste Authority dismissed the concerns as infrastructure fatigue. The canal system was over 70 years old, much of it sealed off or rerouted decades earlier. Still, the complaints kept rolling in. One team claimed they heard what sounded like distant whispering voices while inspecting a junction beneath a shut-down textile mill. Another group found a series of hairline cracks in a maintenance tunnel, leaking a strange black fluid that coagulated when exposed to light. Samples were taken, but the lab results returned inconclusive, and oddly, the paperwork was marked confidential and locked away without further explanation. Then, in early August, 2 sanitation workers assigned to routine blockage removal discovered something chilling beneath Canal District 9, a long-abandoned sector of the old underground network. While navigating through a narrow shaft using infrared scopes, they came across a sealed corridor, not listed on any city map. The corridor was marked by a rusted door with a strange symbol, 3 overlapping rings, with a vertical slash through the center burned into the steel. The lead technician, Luis Calderon, tried to contact his supervisor for clearance, but by the time he returned to the site the next day, the door was gone, welded over, vanished, as if it had never been there. Rumors began to spread within the underground crews. Some claimed to have seen lights flickering from the water. Others said they heard a girl crying soft, rhythmic sobs from behind sealed drainage grates. One crewman even filed a formal complaint, saying he saw a white hospital gown floating down the canal like a ghost, only for it to sink into the water before he could take a picture. He was later transferred without explanation. Internal memos warned staff against speaking to the press, and any worker who pushed for answers was quietly reassigned or let go. Despite mounting fear, the city pushed forward with scheduled inspections. A new crew was sent in with a directive to clear out and document Sector 9 fully. What they found that day would not only reopen the Emily Harper case, it would shatter everything people thought they knew about her disappearance. At the heart of the sealed-off corridor, behind layers of rust, grime, and forgotten architecture, they discovered something the public was never meant to see, something that had been hidden for years, buried beneath their feet, silently waiting. The sewer inspection team sent into Sector 9 that foggy morning was led by veteran foreman Ray Decker, a known-sense man with 22 years on the job and zero patience for ghost stories. Armed with portable lighting rigs, reinforced suits, and 2 drone units, the team descended into a section of the canal system that had been officially closed since 1987 due to structural instability, but what they found deep beneath the surface was not rot or collapse, it was something intentionally sealed off, as if someone had gone to great lengths to bury it from the world. Approximately 1.3 miles into the corridor, one of the drones picked up a spatial anomaly, a low-level energy fluctuation that caused camera interference and scrambled the drone's GPS. Ignoring protocol, Ray ordered a manual breach of a rusted steel partition that had clearly been welded shut from the inside. Behind it was a perfectly intact chamber, lined with white-tiled walls and powered by a humming generator connected to wires that snaked up into the concrete ceiling, feeding power from some unknown source above. This wasn't a forgotten part of the sewer. It was deliberately built down here. The chamber was chilling in its simplicity. Medical tables, empty 4 bags, a cracked mirror, a gurney with leather restraints still fastened in place. Surgical tools, some corroded, some clean almost to clean, as if someone had just wiped them down. But the most disturbing thing was the wall of documentation, pinned across and stuffed in steel filing drawers, pages of handwritten medical notes, patient monitoring logs, tissue growth charts. All with a single recurring name, E. Harper next to them, pinned with a blood-stained tack. Was a hospital bracelet, Emily Harper RM 413 St. Mercy's. The team radioed the surface. One worker named Kyle stumbled across a small, sealed compartment behind a loose panel in the far corner. Inside, he found an old cassette recorder and several unmarked tapes, along with a stack of Polaroid photos, some showing Emily in a hospital bed, but others far more sinister. Images of a young girl strapped down, unconscious, with unfamiliar machinery wired into her spine and skull. One photo even showed a figure standing beside her, his face blurred, but his suit clearly marked with a strange insignia. The same 3-ringed symbol with a slash seen on the welded door. The chamber reeked of death and secrecy. Yet there were no human remains, just a trail of dried blood leading into a side tunnel partially collapsed by debris. Strangely, there were small handprints, faint but visible in the dust and grime, too small for any adult to have made. For a moment, no one spoke. It was as if the air had thickened with something unnatural. Ray, the hardened foreman, muttered only 5 words before demanding they leave. This wasn't built by the city. 2 days after the chamber discovery, the investigation was quietly handed off to a federal agency that refused to identify itself. City officials claimed it was for safety and jurisdictional reasons, but rumors among the sewer crew told a different story. Rumors of black SUVs, unmarked helicopters, and men in suits asking far too many questions. What wasn't publicly acknowledged was that Ray Decker, against orders, had kept one of the cassette tapes and a handful of the Polaroid photographs for himself. And what he heard on saw would change everything. The tape opened with the scratchy hiss of static, then a voicemail.com. Detach began narrating a log entry. Test subject 0413 remains compliant. Neurological mapping continues. Cognitive resistance remains high during nocturnal phases. Administering second round of sodium inhibitors. The voice made several references to someone named Dr. Kale and spoke casually about repetitive memory erosion and implant stabilization. Most disturbing of all was the phrase repeated multiple times throughout the tape: subject does not remember extraction. The implication was Claire Emily had not been kidnapped. She had been removed, quietly, and then subjected to a process designed to erase her memories and reshape her identity. Among the items found was a damaged hard drive, later repaired by an off-the-books tech friend of Ray's. It contained surveillance footage from inside the chamber, time-stamped across several months. In the grainy black and white recordings, Emily could be seen lying restrained on a gurney, visibly conscious but sedated as wide, blinking slowly, lips murmuring soundless words. At times, masked figures entered and adjusted equipment attached to her spine and temples. In one recording, Emily suddenly snapped awake, thrashing, screaming silently at the camera, only to be injected and fall limp again. One folder on the drive was labeled Ares INST42A, referencing what appeared to be a clandestine research organization operating under the name Ares Institute. A quick online search returned nothing. Official, but old web archives and encrypted forums connected Ares to deep state biotech experiments, neurological weaponization, and personality rewrites supposedly used on military detainees during overseas operations. A chilling thread suggested Ares was developing a method to clean slate individuals to strip them of memory, identity, and will effectively turning them into living blanks for experimental purposes. The revelation sent Ray spiraling. He began to suspect Emily had not only been experimented on, but duplicated. Some documents listed terms like genetic match viability, neurological imprint batch, and clone drift. One note even referenced an EHO2, suggesting there may have been more than one Emily Harper. What began as a mysterious disappearance was rapidly unraveling into something far darker. Secret program hidden beneath an unsuspecting city, where lives were erased, rewritten, and maybe even manufactured. And if that was true, it begged one terrifying question: what happened to the original Emily? Roughly 1 week after the hidden chamber was sealed off by federal agents, a second, unrelated sewer maintenance team working several miles downstream near the old canal overflow made a discovery that would shock even the most hardened investigators. Their assignment was routine: clear out a collapsed storm drain before the rainy season intensified. But while draining one of the overflow catch basins, their equipment struck something solid, something large and unnaturally cold to the touch. It wasn't debris. It wasn't machinery. What they had found was a sealed iron tank, wedged in a cavity just beneath the waterline. With no records of it ever being installed there, authorities were called in immediately. It took a hazmat crew 6 hours to lift and cut open the corroded tank. Inside, surrounded by a sickly yellow preservation fluid, was the partially decayed body of a young girl. Her features were distorted from decomposition, but her size, facial structure, and brown hair were nearly identical to Emily Harper. She was dressed in a thin, white hospital gown marked faintly with the faded logo of St. Mercy's Hospital. Along her arms and neck were surgical scars, and along her spine were stainless steel ports, the kind used for long-term experimental implants. The forensics team was stunned. The body had no official record, no medical ID, no autopsy tag. Dental records, when tested, revealed an imperfect match to Emily Harper, not a twin, but something far more unsettling, a genetic copy, with subtle differences that only gene or rapid cellular aging could explain. Internal organs were missing, completely removed with surgical precision, and her skull contained a thin, circular cavity lined with polymer. Experts theorized it was a neural implant socket, possibly for behavior modification or remote influence. It wasn't just a body, it was a prototype. What made the discovery even more disturbing was a small item recovered from the tank's BESA waterproof flash drive, wrapped in plastic and wedged into a maintenance panel. On it was a single folder, encrypted and labeled O1RET. Inside were dozens of progress reports and experimental files. One chilling report outlined the creation of multiple developmental clones derived from a central DNA source. Labeled only as Subject EH, the clone in the tank had been designated EHO1 retired, marked as behaviorally unstable, and disposed of due to protocol breach. In other words, this girl hadn't just died, she had been terminated. The implications shattered what little hope the Harper family had left. If this clone was real and evidence suggested it was, then what had happened to the original Emily? Had she been copied and replaced? Had she escaped? Or been discarded like the others? And more terrifying still, how many Emilys were there? This wasn't just a case of illegal human experimentation, it was a glimpse into something far more dystopian. Something that raised horrifying possibilities about what was hidden beneath hospitals, cities, and even our own identities. 2 days after the discovery of the body in the iron tank, something strange happens, something no one could explain. At exactly 3:13 a.m., a private live stream appeared on an obscure corner of the deep web, only accessible through coordinates extracted from a cryptic geometric symbol engraved in the chamber wall found beneath Sector 9. The URL was not searchable. It could only be accessed through a hexadecimal cipher buried in the metadata of the recovered surveillance photos. Someone had gone through great lengths to hide it, but also to make sure someone eventually found it. The livestream showed a dimly lit, concrete room, bare, silent, except for a flickering fluorescent light above. A girl stepped into frame, pale, thin, wearing what appeared to be a tattered patient gown. Her hair was longer now, tangled at the ends, and her face was older, marked by exhaustion and trauma, but unmistakable. Emily Harper. She stared directly into the camera, her lips trembling. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you're seeing this, I'm still alive. They don't know I got out. I don't know where I am, but I know what they did to me, and what they did to the others." She paused again, then leaned in closer, her eyes wide with urgency. "There were more. Not just me. They made copies. I wasn't the first, and I'm not the only one left." Behind her, for just a second, something moved in the shadows, a silhouette, humanoid, but wrong in proportion. A long, slow movement across the back wall, too fast to be clear but too deliberate to be ignored. Emily flinched and looked over her shoulder, then quickly leaned back into frame. "They're still watching. If anyone can hear this, don't trust the hospitals. Don't trust anyone who says they're trying to help. They're not done yet. They're just hiding." The screen glitched, colors fracturing like broken glass. Just before the feed cut out, a final frame froze, Emily staring into the camera with wide, terrified eyes before vanishing into black. Cyber forensics teams tried to recover the livestream data, but it had already been wiped from every traceable server. It left no origin address, no hosting domain, no IP trail. All that remained was a screen recording saved by a conspiracy YouTuber who had happened upon the link while exploring a deep web arg. It was flagged and taken down within hours. But not before it spread across hidden Discord servers and encrypted boards. Debate erupted. Was it real? A hoax? But the coordinates embedded in the video metadata pointed back to one chilling place: the basement wing of St. Mercy's Hospital, supposedly sealed off for renovations in 2024, and now completely demolished without permit. From that moment on, reports began surfacing from across the country. Other missing teens. Other strange hospital disappearances. Whispers of underground facilities. Footage that disappeared hours after being uploaded. All of it somehow tied back to the same logo: 3 interlocking rings with a vertical slash. The Ares Institute was no longer an urban legend. It was everywhere. And maybe, just maybe, Emily Harper's message was only the beginning of something far more terrifying. So what really happened to Emily Harper? Was she a victim? Or a prototype? A survivor? Or just one of many? The deeper we dig, the more we realize this wasn't just one girl's story. This was a warning. A blueprint. A shadow operation hidden in plain sight, using hospitals, labs, and cities as testing grounds for something we still can't fully understand.